What's up, fellow gamers? Phreak here, and League of Legends patch 10.25 is coming out tomorrow or today based on your time zone, or it already came out if you're watching this video late. This is what I kind of consider the first really good, I guess, preseason patch follow-up. And it's not that any of the prior changes were bad, I just thought that it was consistently too few. Actually, of note is even one of the changes in this patch was micropatched like on like day 2 of 1024. So either way, this is a very, very large patch. A lot is going on. I like pretty much every single change here. Again, really good patch. This should put the game in a lot better state. I'm sure there are still going to be some outliers that are sad, but honestly, I think the game's in a lot better spot, so that's good. Honestly, not so bad that it only took about a month and it's preseason anyway. In retrospect, I'm not really sad about the balanced state of the game overall. This is pretty reasonable. So let's talk about patch 10.25 and what's going into it. We've got specific nerfs to Annie, Fizz, Jhin, Kayle, Kayn, Morgana, and Samira, specifically Morgana mid. And then specific buffs to Anivia, Echo, Gragas. I mean, you can read all these, but there's a ton of buffs to incredibly underperforming champions. Item changes that are more or less buffs to support items. Item changes that are strictly buffs to AD carry items, and then some changes to mana mythics. These are also, by the way, debatable if they're buffs or not. Ludens is not necessarily a buff. Range lethality down, tank items down. Okay, let's talk about it. Bunch of new skins. Rel is a new champion. That should be cool as well. Okay, Rel exists. Great stuff. Let's move on. So Amumu, this again was hotfixed during 10.24. We're reiterating the changes in case you missed it. Yeah, so back to normal champion mana. Tantrum losing 0 to 20 damage, which you would max first or second, usually first. R actually rank 1 and 2 have lower stun duration. Basically, they buffed Amumu's ultimate to be a stun, like right before preseason. And so Amumu was already, like, I want to be clear about something. Amumu was not like uniquely a beneficiary of preseason. What happened with Amumu is they made his ultimate an actual stun instead of just a root plus disarm. That was a substantial power up. And then because Amumu tended to buy like at least one mana item in the patch before, they compensated him with some mana growth. Because, hey, maybe he's not going to buy Frozen Heart anymore. Who knows? He went Runic Echo sometimes. Who knows what the exact reasoning was? But basically, Riot went and gave every champion who tended to buy mana a bunch of extra mana because they remove mana from a lot of items, which makes sense. If this champion, needs the mana to function, then let's do it now and deal with the rest of the fallout later. I get that. But Amumu was already the best performing tank jungler before preseason ever hit. Tank junglers became OP, and so Amumu was just the best champion. And so, lo and behold, they revert the mana buff that you didn't really need. They said, okay, well, now that the ultimate stuns, let's lower the duration. So the only real, like new nerf to Amumu is, hey, out of nowhere, very air quotes, Tantrum deals less damage. But yeah, totally fits his play style. Keep in mind that the new Sunfire upgrades like all deal more damage than Cinder Hulk. So Amumu, like, even though he was already building Cinder Hulk a lot, just got a lot more damage. Either way, Amumu is, again, these are not new changes. Amumu is no different than he was yesterday or the day before that or the day before that. But yeah, he is a roughly balanced tank now, and that's fine. We have the numbers here just in case you want to see them. So here's the mana pool before and after, right? Scales up to a nice clean about 1,000. E damage definitely down a pretty meaningful amount. Worth looking at. Okay, so Anivia gets a bunch of changes here. So first of all, her attacks are better. This, as far as I can tell, so what it says here is the animation has been sped up. That's probably correct. My understanding of the attack delay cast offset is what part of the animation the attack comes out. Now, that may well mean that, like, this frame of the animation is where the projectile launches, so speed up the first half of the animation, and then just, like, then go back to normal speed for the rest of it. It may well be that, and then indeed the animation is sped up. Regardless, what this means is you don't have to spend as long animating before the projectile comes out, which means if you're trying to attack and then leave, or react to a minion getting low and get an auto attack out in time, this in fact helps you. And this is going to be fairly meaningful. Like, this will be felt. The missile speed up very slightly. So again, even more haste in terms of when you right click to the projectile landing, that's going to be sped up even more. This, to me, is probably the single biggest change I mean, there's a lot of big changes to be clear, but this is the single biggest change to me on Anivia. The Q projectile speed is now somewhat reasonable. Now, 950 is still fairly slow, don't get me wrong, but you will absolutely feel a 20% missile speed increase. This is a really, really big deal. This is going to do a lot, especially the fact that now Q1 applies chill. It already slowed. Chill is the effect that makes Frostbite deal double damage. So now you don't have to necessarily blow up the Q to get your double damage E. A lot of times you would anyway, sure, but you don't have to do it in case there's something else to go for. Like you want to stun the Ashe, but deal double damage to Renekton while you're kiting him. Those are, things that are certainly possible. There is a bug with the detonation being too far back, so, greater sort of target selection on that, which is a positive. The one thing that has changed though is this. So okay, the ability is cheaper from ranks 2 onwards, and pretty meaningfully so. 20 mana off is quite nice. The damage has been cut down, the AP ratio has been cut down, but the cooldown, right? Technically, if you rank 1 of the ability is roughly the same damage, but a lower AP ratio, but a longer cooldown as well. By max rank of the ability, it's a lower cooldown, so like the DPS may indeed just be higher. But they're basically incentivizing like, hey, maybe Qmax might be correct. Now, it's probably not. You probably still are doing Qmax second because Frostbite is too valuable, but it's, a consideration, I suppose. And we'll do the numbers in chart form in a second. Frostbite gets a very substantially cut down mana cost. The fact that the mana cost does not scale with rank up means you're even more likely to rank it first. The damage is just simply up 20% as well. The AP ratio also up 20%, so even more reason to say, hey, you should probably just max Frostbite first. And then the final change is Glacial Storm, though the damage is down by about a quarter. The cooldown after turning it off is shrunk substantially. Basically, this means you can reposition Glacial Storm much more rapidly as time goes on. So these should all feel like pretty big Anivia buffs. So here is Anivia Q cooldown and mana cost before and after. Again, assuming you're maxing it last, it's going to take until level 10 to get the same cooldown. It's going to take until level 8 to get better mana costs. So, I mean, realistically, now again, the missile speed is faster. Like, if all they did was, like, slightly nerf Q damage and slightly nerf Q cooldown, but made the missile faster, this would be a buff to the ability. Like, so far, from what we've seen, this ability is strictly just stronger than before. Yeah, you might end up, oh, I don't want shot casters anymore, and yeah, sure. Like, there are some cases where you'd really, really wish you had the other version of the ability, but in general, yeah, I would consider this. Honestly, I'd argue it's actually a nerf to the champion overall, just the cooldown change in and of itself. Although I'm happy for an 11 to 7 cooldown change. I think that's totally reasonable to do. Mana cost buff, obviously quite nice. And then here's the damage change. This is Q1. This is, by the way, with no AP and with 100 AP. So this is just Q1, just to be clear, right? So it is down, about 17% in damage. And the AP ratio, by the way, is nerfed by even more than the base damage. So the more AP you get, the even worse Q1 is, right? At 100 ability power, which is not even that far into the game, it's 50 damage down. This is a very, very substantial nerf to Q1's damage. It is a very low damaging ability. Now, again, it's the first half of the Q, who cares? One thing I want to start doing, though, because I'm going to probably eventually do a video on scaling and AP ratios and such, when it's convenient, I am jotting down the AP ratio to double the damage of an ability. Because I've been saying over the last couple of videos, I'm pretty confident this number is about 350 on almost all abilities for regular mages. And Anivia is now breaking that trend, right? She was 350. It was, right, if you look at the old numbers, right, Q1 was 160 at 45%. Now it's 130 at 25%, which means it takes over 500 ability power, which not only is Q's base damage low, Q's AP ratio is abysmal. Like, the damage is low and it's not scaling. Now, hold on, Phreak. Q2 got stronger. Indeed, it did. Here's Q2 damage. Q2 damage is, of course, up by, to be fair, a pretty solid amount. By 10 to 50, if I have my numbers right. I do, yes. So it's going down by 10 to 30 on the first half, but it's going up by 10 to 50 on the other half. It's like, okay, well, now we know that the total damage is higher. And then indeed, the AP ratio, of course, went up a little bit as well. So the total damage with ability power goes up on top of that one. So, okay, yeah, we've got a 55 damage increase here, a 50 damage decrease there. Seems kind of reasonable. We're okay now, right? And then, okay, let's look at the ability overall. Because keep in mind, the AP ratio overall went from 4545 is 0.9 to 25 and 5 is 0.75. So the AP ratio of Q overall went down despite the base damage going up. And lo and behold, right here, this title bar, the total AP ratio of Anivia Q used to be 356. The total AP ratio, and it's, sorry, not total AP ratio. The amount of AP required to double the damage of the ability at maxed rank is now 450, which means Anivia Q now has a bad AP ratio compared to other mages. Now, that can be okay. It's a reliable stun. You know, they actually still bumped the base damage of the ability, so even up to 100 ability power, you're still doing more damage than before. Again, yeah, you're still maxing this ability last, but again, the base damage is the same. AP ratio is not so horribly worse, and then the base damage goes up over time. And hey, 340 is a very high base damage, right? And hey, they buffed the E base damage as well, so, you know, how bad can it really be? But worth pointing out that Anivia now does have, not uniquely, there's certainly champions who have it worse, but Anivia does have now fairly bad AP ratio scaling on the Q. But Q is, especially in late game most scenarios, objectively a stronger ability, right? Late game cooldown's shorter, late game mana cost is lower, the thing moves faster, total damage is higher. It takes a bunch of AP to make it lower, but even by then, you're now saying, okay, well, at 3 items, my Q damage is 20 lower. It's like, yeah, well, it hits 20% more reliably, so worth it. So this is overall, like, net change, a buff to Q. And I think that's really, I think you can't really debate this. This is obviously a direct buff to auto-attacking. Frostbite just simply costs less mana and deals more damage, so here you go. Both before and after, because they increase by the same amount, it is 300 AP to double the damage of E. So that's fairly reasonable. Sure, okay, great. Again, pretty substantial mana cost change. Pretty solid damage increase. It's, again, 20% to the base damage and the AP ratio. And then the R cooldown, down, of course, quite a lot. The base damage down slightly. AP ratio did not change. It's, sorry, the AP ratio did change. It went from 0.5 to 0.6. So Anivia's damage scaling actually went out of her Q and into her R. Now, I will say that I dislike this. It is one thing that I really, really enjoy about ultimates in League of Legends is they tend to be really base damage skewed, not AP ratio skewed, so that if you are behind on a champion, you can cast your big high impact ultimate like Crow Storm or Requiem or whatever, and it's gonna do something. Like, I mean, think about a champion like Taric or Janna, where no matter how few items they have, their ultimate does what their ultimate does, right? Sona's Crescendo. Bam. Yep, that's going to do like something valuable no matter how weak you are, no matter how little you have going on. Your ult will do something good. Now, to be fair, you could argue that, you know, late game Anivia ult is a shorter cooldown than things like her Q. Why can't Q have the base damage? Why can't R have the scaling? And there's a case to be made, right? Anivia is a special case where her ultimate cooldown is shorter than her basic ability cooldown. Very few, if literally any champions have this going on. Udyr doesn't count. It's not an ultimate. Same for any other transform champion. So, you know, there's an argument to be made that Anivia should be the exception to the rule, and she should have an aggressive AP ratio on the ultimate, right? 480 to double rank 3 ultimate is, I mean, you know, right about where the Q sits, right? This is very bad for a basic ability. This is very, very good for an ultimate. I can't say it's necessarily wrong. It's just interesting. It stands out. But it means that, you know, sort of every ability, you know, scales at least somewhat with ability power. E scales very, very strongly. And overall, I think it's pretty easy to say that this is a strict buff to Anivia. This is going to be a much stronger champion, and we're going to see her pick rate skyrocket. And she may well be actually overpowered. That might not be true. There is I will say maybe a 10% chance we have hotfix nerfs to this champion. I think the odds are very, very low that there need to be hotfix buffs. I would be truly shocked if this ended up being powered down. We'll see how it goes, though. Should be in a pretty good spot, though. Should be very strong. Annie is losing flat 10% move speed off her shield. Now, the shield move speed scales with champion level, not rank. And I want to point a couple of things out real quick because I wrote this stuff down and then didn't bring it up until now. I jotted down according to yesterday night. So, I mean, maybe like 12, 13 hours ago. I went and looked up all these champions' win rates on pretty much any role with a at least 10% selection rate. And using Lolalytics, shout out to that site, it's amazing. wrote down how good these champions were in their various roles at Plat Plus worldwide solo queue for patch 10.24. So Anivia comes into these patch notes and there's an asterisk here, 49.67% win rate. But the average win rate at Plat Plus, because of how matchmaking works, was 50.6. So Anivia comes into the patch a full 1% win rate below median, and I guess probably mean, to be honest, because popularity, but below the mean win rate. And yeah, even if she gains 2% off the change list, is still totally within reason. But yeah, should be in a pretty reasonable spot. Annie, I want to point out, is a nearly 55% win rate mid laner in Plat Plus. Now, what's interesting, and this is, again, we're only measuring like the top 10% of players doing this. Annie is a balanced 50% win rate support. But for some reason, most Annie support players are still maxing Q first. If you max her shield, because, she's a support, she gains 3% win rate and is then a 53% win rate support, which is very, 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 very high. Really, really strong champion. So if you look at data very blankly, it looks like Annie's a balanced support and an OP mid. If you are paying attention to playing Annie well at all, she is an OP mid and an OP support. End of the day, it is a 10% move speed nerf on the E. This sort of column right there is assuming, base move speed plus the buff. That's how much you're going to do afterwards. Yeah, this is still a pretty meaningful change. This is a much needed nerf, but Annie is still going to be, I think, very, very much on the strong side. Next up, Echo is getting jungle buffs. Echo is a 46% win rate jungler and a 53% win rate mid laner. Very, very strong in mid. Now, again, all win rates are inflated by about 0.6%. So, more like 52% win rate mid laner. So quite strong, but not completely overbearing. Either way, the Echo jungle is complete dog poop, right? 4.5% win rate below expected. So there's a really big monster damage increase. Now the passive is when you hit something 3 times, you do a big chunk of damage. There's a big base damage. There's a really, really big AP ratio. And instead of doing 1.5x to monsters, it does 2.5x to monsters, which is, of course, a pretty substantial damage increase. And in fact, here is the graph of that. Because the AP ratio is really, really large, there was, in fact, a cap on how much damage this could do to monsters. And so I wrote how much AP you would need to cap the damage in 10.24, and now how much AP you would have needed to cap the damage in 10.25. Anything in yellow is me saying you probably didn't have enough AP anyway for the buff to matter. So of course, yes indeed, the third hit on the passive does 2/3 more damage at all points in time without any ability power. Obviously, the percentage increase is the exact same with ability power because it's multiplying off of everything. But this is definitely a very substantial damage increase and a lever that I am glad Riot is using more and more. Of course, they can't really buff Echo directly because Echo mid is arguably too strong. He's certainly very good. But Echo jungle is complete dog poop. So let's use a jungle specific tuning lever, the passive damage jungle monsters. And in fact, why can't we just get rid of the damage cap? Because it's a flat damage thing anyway. We don't, if it's percent health damage and it's capped, I get it, but yeah. So 2/3 more damage to jungle monsters. Now again, by necessity, you have to have auto attacked or cast spells to get this. So there is always more damage rounded into this. But we'll talk about the AP cap here as well, which is, in the very late game, you were hitting the damage cap when you were getting to 4 items or so. That is gone. And the cap going away is really useful just because of this damage buff, because you would have capped otherwise. So you generally would have capped it around 2 items, and now you won't. And so, cool beans. Definitely a pretty meaningful buff to Echo. That should gain him several points of win rate. Probably still sub 50 in jungle, but cool to see it happen. Next up, Fizz is overtuned slightly, and so, overtuned. He's like the 3rd best ban in League of Legends because he's popular and very, very strong. Fizz's overall win rate, 55.13%. That is absurdly high. Definitely OP. Very small little hurt right here that we were so close to just putting Fizz at 320 plus 40. My mind's perfect mana pool. 320 plus 40 puts you at exactly 1000 level 18. It's gorgeous, and we're 3 mana off, and we're 3 mana per level off. Now, to be fair, Fizz does not need to be buffed by 3 mana and 3 mana per level. above what the nerf would have been, right? There's no reason to pull punches on the Fizz nerf, and I totally get that. It totally makes sense to not, you know, to not do a softer nerf just because. Totally makes sense. Totally get it. That said, 20 mana growth is not a 5% win rate bump. So, or nerf, you know, to be fair. So, Fizz will still be a very, very, very strong mid laner. Maybe not the single best mid laner in the game anymore, but certainly very, 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 very strong. And yeah, real strong champ. Gragas next up is getting 1/3 more healing on the passive and 1/6 off the W cooldown. Gragas overall, 46.4% win rate in the jungle. It's the only role he's really played popularly in. Even then, 1.6% pick rate is not exactly high. It's slightly above Anivia, which isn't saying much either. Ultimately, yeah. Obviously, these are solid buffs. Gragas is another jungler who's not doing all that well. I did not dive terribly deeply into his builds. I don't know if like a large portion of people are playing AP Gragas and failing, but tank Gragas is fine. I'm not really sure. I assume this is, you know, a reasonable balance change for tank Gragas. Also, Gragas tends to be a champion who just sits below 50% win rate in solo queue and gets pro play anyway. So I think it's kind of okay to be conservative a little bit. Next up, we have Aurelia, who's getting more or less sort of base value going on. So 2 flat AD, 65 is pretty high base AD, especially considering her passive. Another big one is 1 flat second off the Q cooldown. So especially if you are missing resets, you will get this back sooner. This same with base stats, really. These tend to be buffs that are better in low elo than high elo. Not that they're not going to be useful for a plat plus or even pro play. Power is power, and that's good no matter what. But certainly I think is going to be more impactful for weaker players who might miss a Q reset and hey, they get it back sooner, so that's nice. Or, you know, helping with lap hitting and things like that. Aurelia, by the way, absurdly weak. 45.8 in top lane, 44.4 in mid lane. Those are incredibly low win rates. Aurelia could use a lot more power than this, by the way. You could give, I think it's like her stats are fine in a lot of cases in the first place, so you'd have to find other places to buff her, but she is really struggling. Some of it may well be that people are building the wrong mythic on her and stuff like that. She might have some more dominant options that people aren't doing. I know that exists to a certain degree for several champions, and you know, maybe just people didn't discover correctly on Aurelia. Like I know for Ezreal, for example, he has like a 3% win rate lift if you pick Divine Sunder instead of Trinity Force. And on day 1, it was 80% Trinity Force. And then as time went on, you know, like the start of 1024, then Eclipse was the more popular mythic, and lo and behold, Ezreal just keeps gaining win rate because people are buying the right items on him. Or not Eclipse, but Divine Sunderer. And, you know, this may well be the case with Aurelia as well. I didn't investigate, but here is Aurelia's AD. Here's the Aurelia Q cooldown. Totally meaningful buffs. Again, she's not going to be anywhere near overpowered. What I find kind of funny is Aurelia still has a fairly high ban rate of 5.7%, and is just completely garbage as a champion. She's like actually unplayable. But she's popular, and that's cool. Like people like playing her. I think she's fun to play as well. She's flashy, which I think is cool as well. But people are frustrated by this garbage champion dashing around and failing to win. Next up, we get Ivern buffs. Ivern definitely in a weak spot as well. 47.8% win rate. Again, about 3 percentage points below what you expect for the mean in Plat Plus. Definitely quite weak. And Ivern is a champion that I think realistically is another one that can deserve to be high win rate. He's not terribly frustrating when OP. When you compare to something like, Lee Sin or Karthus or Graves or even like a Rek'Sai being overtuned, like those champions feel like they take over the game and it feels like you are powerless. They show up to your lane, you die to them, they take the Baron, they take the dragons, you just kind of lose. If Ivern's overtuned, it's like, he can be frustrating because like now the Aurelia or the Yasuo or whatever is carrying, but it is a less frustrating thing. And to be honest, like I really believe this is true. The true essence of doing any live design is enjoyment is more important than raw balance. I mean, there was a Reddit thread a couple days ago talking about how ridiculously Riot has failed because look how OP Akali is. Her win rate is 50.1%. What are you doing, Riot? What horrible balance. It's like 50.1 is low for Plat Plus, if that's where you're looking, and I mean, even still, Bruh. But yeah, champions like Akali are frustrating. I get it, right? When assassins are balanced, people are frustrated because assassins kill you. When enchanters, like Ivern, are OP, you're less frustrated because they're not killing you. And it's kind of okay. Anyway, really big buffs. 2 seconds to Root Caller, 1 second to Trigger Seed, 10% AP ratio to that as well. Daisy even attacks faster. So here is Q cooldown and E cooldown. I'm backwards. This is E first. This is Q second. Yeah, 12 to 8 becomes 11 to 7. This is the E cooldown. 14 to 10 becomes 12 to 8. This is the Q cooldown. Again, pretty meaningful. Daisy getting 12% more attack speed, which is nice. It's not only just raw DPS, but also it's less time until you get knocked up. Right when Daisy gets a third attack and the spikes come out and knocks everyone in the air, that's pretty powerful as well. So pretty big stuff. This is really substantial. Again, Ivern needs to gain about at least 3 percentage points to be in a decent spot, and this is close to that. Like this is really meaningful. I want to point out compared to other junglers, and other laners even who use their cooldowns a lot, Ivern's cooldowns are less meaningful because the only cooldowns Ivern can use while jungling are, I mean, I guess Root Caller get over walls, get to a camp faster, but otherwise it's only in team fights, right? Like imagine you buffed Graves Q by 2 seconds cooldown, his clear speed would be faster. That doesn't happen here, right? Ivern doesn't lane or jungle any faster with these cooldown buffs, so because they are used for less of the game, right? Because they don't affect how well he lanes, because he doesn't lane. They don't affect how well he jungles, because he doesn't jungle like other champions. These buffs are also bigger on paper than they will be in actual impact. But I will say, Trigger Seed's cooldown being this short, super big deal. This is a ton of extra shielding. Next up, we have Jhin, who is the best performing of all bot laners. 53.4% win rate. Again, could stand to lose 3 percentage points and be balanced overall. Is taking some small nerfs with some of the item changes coming into this patch, but also a flat 10% total AD ratio on the Q. I want to point out, Jin's abilities mostly all have total AD ratios, so they this is actually a flat damage increase or decrease and an AD ratio decrease. So here's the numbers here, pretty substantial overall. 10% flat off, means less as time goes on, of course, but yeah, pretty substantial nerf. This is, a solid 10% damage off at most points in the game. You will feel this. Jhin Q is going to do quite a bit less damage. Combined with the item nerfs, this is definitely meaningful. Jin's going to lose a lot of power. He's no longer going to be the best AD carry. Karthus is not doing super duper well either. Will point out though, I went and looked at data. Karthus jungle is 54.3. Karthus mid is 49.0, and Karthus bot is 48.2. So, 1.5% weak in mid lane, about 2% weak in bot, but a solid 5% weak in jungle is a really big deal. So a pretty moderate 0 to 4 mana off the Q. Still worth pointing out, this is a 10% mana cost decrease. So, consider Anivia Q going from something like 110 to 100. This is something similar. Like it's not quite as big because Anivia went from 120 to 100. This is not quite as big of a change as Anivia Q got, but still a not garbage one. Lowest mana cost is meaningful. Keep in mind a lot of AP junglers, since Runic Echoes is gone. Runic Echoes not only was overtuned overall, but gave a ton of mana back, and so AP junglers running out of mana is a big constraint here. And of course, they have to jam Q forever. Like, keep in mind, if you're playing Karthus mid or Karthus bot, you can choose to just auto attack to like last hit a melee minion or cash minion or whatever, or simply just use the last Q on a melee minion and, deal 90 damage to it, kill it, and then get your E mana refund. You can Q kind of like once per minion. It's not a big deal. Karthus has to jam on Q forever all the time to burn down jungle camps. And often, defile as well. And sure, in your first clear you have blue buff, but your second clear you don't. And if you're handing up loose to your mid laner, which, sometimes you should in a Karthus, sometimes not based on the champion, it's just not always up, right? So definitely Karthus is a very mana constrained jungler. It's pretty important here. So this will help jungle quite a lot. Also, the Q AP ratio going back up by 5% AP. I think Q still has a monster damage drop off. That said, I think Karthus is probably healthier as a champion, as a mid or bot laner, and not so much as a jungler. Like, the playstyle of I'm just going to AFK hard farm my jungle forever and ignore my team the entire game, and then I'll ult when there's a thing going on. And look, I'm ganking. Like, it's not terribly healthy. I think that Karthus is generally unhealthy as a jungler. I don't think they're trying to get Karthus jungle to 50% because again, they could change like monster damage stuff. They could pull the echo tuning lever, right, and just do monster damage. But I think Karthus being at least 50% in mid and bot would be good. And this gets pretty close. I mean, you're looking to gain 1.5% win rate. I would say that 10% off your mana cost of your primary ability and a pretty sizable AP ratio bump is going to do it for you. So here is the mana cost changes. Right, here you go. Again, 9% off the mana cost. Looking at how much AP does it take to double the damage of the ability. Oh, look, once again, we are ending at 357. Yes, indeed, Karthus had a pretty bad Q ratio. To be fair, Defile, the E ratio is still really bad. It's why old Karthus builds would just stack Flat Pen, and you would go Sorcerer's Oblivion Orb and, Runic or Luden's Echoes. And it wasn't actually that important to go like Roa Ceros because the AP wasn't that useful anyway. Just because comparatively, you'd rather go Leandries. And then Azonias, you can just stay in the fight for longer, because staying in the fight for longer was better than getting more AP ratio for your fights to be, spikier. So, end of the day, yeah, meaningful buffs to Karthus. Cool beans. Should be in a pretty decent spot for mid. Next up, Kayle loses 4 MR. Goodbye, non-standard magic resist. Of course, Kayle is still doing very, 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 very well. 53.8 in top, 55.6 in mid. Quite overtuned, is winning as much as Fizz. I mean, really, really just too strong overall. So we drop off 4 MR. That tends to be a bit more mid-focused of a nerf. And to be fair, Kayle has 2% higher win rate in mid. So, yep. Lowering her on-hit damage by another 5% AP. Definitely meaningful here as well. All you're going to look at really is Kayle's magic durability. By going down 4 MR, she loses about 3% magic damage durability, which, yeah, you're going to feel when, Victor or Swain or whoever is trying to kill her. So, yeah, great. Next up, we have buffs to Kayn. Sorry, nerfs to Kayn. Just kidding, haha. Kayn, another champion who is doing far too well. 55.5% win rate. Really, really absurd. That's, the overall Kayn win rate, regardless of red or blue. And I will point out, red Kayn is the more overpowered of the two Kayns. If you run Gore Drinker, you're doing a lot better than if you're going Duskblade or Eclipse or whatever. So red Kayn is where more of the nerfs should be. Regardless, the early clear is good no matter what. So 3 armor off, 10 damage off the Q, and 1 second increase on the Q cooldown. All of these are very, very big for early jungle clear getting nerfed. Like, those are all going to be very impactful for that part of the game. Now, I will point out, red Kayn replaces this damage, which means in the long run, I'm going to say that, obviously base armor and your early clear and your Q cooldown, those just nerf all of Kayn. And again, Kayn deserves to lose like 4% win rate, right? Like, he deserves to get sledgehammered here. Fizz lost 20 mana per level. Kayn got real nerfs. So, not all nerfs were properly sized here in this patch, to be clear. But blue Kayn still has to take this damage nerf. Red Kayn does not. So red Kayn gets to kind of skate out of this, and unless you really think late game 3 armor hurts red Kayn more than blue Kayn, and there's an argument to be made for that. As soon as you get red Kayn, you overwrite one of the 3 nerfs, and this, I think, further increases the red versus blue disparity. So not exactly in love with this. Honestly, I would have preferred a nerf that somehow preserved the rank 5 damage, just because like a secondary goal should be preserving red versus blue Kayn, and I don't feel like this really does it. Oh well. Either way, here is physical durability, down about 2% in the early game, down 1.5% in the late game. Here's the Q cooldown and damage. Again, really, really meaningful damage, or a cooldown increase. The damage cutoff, around, I don't know what, 8, 9, something around here. As soon as you're red Kayn, you can also just stop ranking Q, because you don't care about the, that much anymore. But yeah, I mean, regardless, big nerf, I think, pretty well aimed overall. That's definitely meaningful. Next up, we have Lee Sin, who is also a steaming pile of unplayable. Lee Sin's solo queue win rate. Get ready for this one. Guess in your mind, what's solo queue Lee Sin's win rate? 43.6. He is 7% lower than mean. That is absurd. Lee Sin is maybe the most garbage champion in League of Legends. It's close. There's not a lot that are down there in the dregs with Lee Sin, but it's bad. So, flat 3 armor, 2 seconds. And by the way, to be clear, this is really more like 1 second if you target a champion or yourself. But if you jump to a ward or a minion or something, then it's 2 seconds. And 20 flat damage on E. Now, this is pretty meaningful, right? 3 armor is durability for the early clear. W, low cooldown, is clearing your first camp faster because you get your W up again earlier to get your passive on for the extra attack speed. And you get the shield, maybe 1 extra time. Like, this is a really, really meaningful deal. This is a big, this is a jungle clear speed increase, to be clear. Like, more than anything else, this really, really helps jungle clear speed. But it can help durability, of course, as well, and things like that. 20 damage on Tempest, of course, meaningful as well. The scaling on that Tempest is not great. I wouldn't have minded seeing this be 100 to 300 and given him a consideration of maxing E second. Like, I brought it up in a couple of other rundowns before, but I would love, especially with low-hanging fruit like this, where it's like, look, Lee Sin is not good, right? This champion is obviously not strong. Like, the designer could have taken a look at what is the W second versus E second win rate difference? Is it like 4%? Okay, we can really, really bump up E's rank up, right? And I'm not saying make it as good, but like make it less bad. And I know there have been designers before who have made these kinds of changes where it's like, look, it's not correct to max this ability second, but people are doing it anyway, so let's at least make it, a bit more competitive. And hey, down the line, wouldn't it be nice to like get to choose a more assassin-y Lee Sin? I mean, I still want Tempest to do physical damage, by the way, as well, so that things like Black Cleaver and lethality can feel better. I realize it's technically a damage nerf in a lot of cases, but still, like, the ability for Lee Sin to say, you know what, screw it, yeah, we're going to max E second, we're going to really go for high burst damage, we're going to really, really go after squishies, and I'm going to just be frail. Like, I think that is really, really worth considering. I'd like to see it at some point in time. It's not today, but that's okay. So again, durability increase, pretty meaningful, right? 2.3 to 1.5%. Lee Sin has very, very high armor scaling, so going up to 99 at level 18 is quite high. His base health is basically about 2,000, and considering he has a W shield, that's, reasonable for a melee champion to then have the shield on top to go for that. But yeah, here's Lee Sin E damage. He maxed it last. Again, there's not really much of a reason to max it second with 20 more base damage on top, so you probably leave it here. But hey, yeah, 20 more base damage to the ability. Definitely going to be nice, definitely going to help. Still going to be too weak, but really, really big buff. Probably 3.5% or something like that. Lulu is getting a small, very small redesign on Glitterlance. So, what's happening is the base damage is down by 10. However, a double hit is 25% bonus damage, which if you do really, really quick napkin math, is a buff to any and all possible double hits. Obviously, single hits are weaker. However, more going on, okay? Not just this. Instead of bolts having fall off damage from pass through, bolts instead is to reduce damage to minions, which means, if you Glitterlance through a minion line, everything but the first melee minion is going to take the same damage as before because it was 70% before and it's 70% after. The difference, though, is hitting the enemy champion through the minion line. That's doing full damage now. That's new. That's different. That's exciting. What's also fun and exciting is the ability to double Glitterlance something. All those numbers we have for you, and let's talk about them. So technically, 1 hit versus 2 hits, you're hitting like a single cannon minion or the single Baron Nashor or whatever. If you somehow only single hit, you're down this much damage. If you double hit, you're up 10 to almost 20% damage. That's really nice. Now, I am using Lulu Support as the example build because Lulu Support is the most common role for her, and her most popular build is maxing Q last. That's what I'm choosing. But obviously, these are your breakpoints, right? Just like look at these numbers. And, that's what rank 2, 3, 4, and 5 do. So you can do a little bit of fishing yourself. But yeah, it means that, hey, rank 5 of Q is 262 damage on a double hit. Which, to be clear, is not that absurd. Like, for a skill shot that has to hit twice, which is not super reliable, that's not that much damage. Like, that's not that big of a deal. And I want to point out, right, if you cast E on someone and then cast Q and they dodge the second one, it is simply dealing less damage. So, there is a real thought here that, look, in some cases, it really is less damage. Then we have, okay, well, what if I'm hitting a champion through a minion wave? Okay, well, now the 1 hit is better because I'm not getting fall off damage. And the 2 hit is way better, right? The 2 hit, if I am actually poking you through a minion wave and I'm hitting those shots, this is a really, really, really substantial damage increase. because it was only going to be, 154 damage off of getting a Q through it all. Now it's 262 because no fall off and a 25% damage increase. So yeah, that is really, really big. If you are hitting them through a wave, wow, that's some really significant poke. But of course, that's assuming you're not Eing onto them first and then, just having picks hit the glitter lance for you. Then finally, we have minion damage, right? So obviously, in a lot of cases, there was already some fall off. And this is kind of assuming that already, that this is just looking at the 10 base damage decrease and saying, look, for the most part, there was already fall off. So let's just take the 30% damage off and just leave it all there together, right? 12% damage cut is exactly the same as this. It's just this. It's exactly this graph, but at 30% cut. But hey, look, wave clear is often multi-hitting. If I'm going to multi-hit for the wave clear, bam, we do that. Now, it can be hard to hit the entire mini wave with 2 shots. Glitterlance only has so much width. Minions sometimes spread out. You're going to get a mix of both these, right? You're going to get a mix of both these. You're going to get a mix of losing 7 damage and a mix of gaining 5.25. This is roughly neutral, all things considered, to minions. I mean, hitting the first melee minion for full damage is not really that big of a deal. So it's pretty neutral on wave clear. If you can, hit champions through a wave, it's really up there, of course. But yeah, I mean, this makes Glitterlance a bigger threat. It means that Lulu support is more likely to consider Q. As a max, I think is interesting. I think Lulu being able to be more of a poke mage is an interesting thing. So we'll see how it goes. But I don't think it's going to be hugely power impactful in really any of these cases. It's going to end up fairly neutral to me. That's my actual read here. Lulu is basically 51.5% win rate in both top and support. She's played like 18 times as often in support, and even though she's not a common top laner, I know people are talking about lane Lulu being OP, and yeah, I mean, Lulu is like on the slightly strong side overall as a champion, but seems to be, pretty reasonable, all things considered. Next up, we have Mordekaiser, who is a bit weak, 48.1% win rate in solo queue, and so they're bumping his isolated Q damage. This is, by the way, a 40% here, just not written out. It's just a typo. Isolated Q damage is up by 10 percentage points, which is, like an 8 to 7% damage increase overall, but it counts the base damage, counts everything else. Mordekaiser Q is interesting in that it is, it has a champion level scaling component as well as a rank up scaling component, so the damage just keeps going up and up and up and up. Like I said, 8 to 7% damage increase is what that ends up being, and, thought it was kind of worth noting. How much ability power does it take to double the damage of Q as levels go up and up? And hey, at level 9, with like a normal sort of base damage ability, it's 320. It's like a fairly normal, AP ratio for Mordekaiser. And indeed, these are fairly normal numbers to have in the fairly early parts of the game. And, of course, he rushes things like old Leandries and Ryleys. I don't know his new build is probably Riftmaker. I'm not certain exactly. But worth pointing out that as time goes on, the basic like champion level scaling does so much work that and to be fair, I actually kind of like this design a bit because Mordekaiser's last rank up is W, which has no damage incentive at all. I guess it has like magic pen on it, but no other damage incentives. And so it was a way to like have Mordekaiser still be relevant late game because his damage keeps scaling. And I get that. Like that makes sense to a certain degree. I don't really dislike that design, but it does mean that ability power means less and less and less as time goes on, because late game, taking a full 500 AP to double your spell damage is just not really tenable. It's not a reasonable AP ratio. I'm not saying the AP ratio needs to scale with champion level as well, or that Mordekaiser needs the AP ratio to be up by another 0.1 or something, although maybe it should, I don't know. But Mordekaiser, for example, has kind of bad late game AP scaling, at least on the Q. Maybe it's okay on other abilities, I didn't look at them, but it's something to consider, right? Is that like, oh, this is why Mord kind of just builds tank stuff and, almost, it's not like he falls off because, again, the Q damage literally just scales by itself. But, I should say more builds into more tank items because AP is less relevant as time goes on. All right, then we have Morgana. Morgana mid is definitely OP. 54.8% win rate as a support. She's fine, 51.3. Totally reasonable down there. Again, as somewhat of an enchanter, I think is allowed to be above 50. Morgana, I would argue, is a less frustrating support than someone like, let's say, Zyra or Brand or Pike, even. Although I don't know. I feel like supports don't really get that much flack regardless, so it's not really that big of a deal. But here's Morgana's W damage, assuming you're maxing it first, which would have been a Morgana mid. I decided to pull in all the numbers and just, multiply out the duration, so that we had like the full base damage of the ability. Now keep in mind, this ability still has a bunch of damage scaling based on missing health. But hey, assuming you're going to max it first, yeah, it is a pretty meaningful 13% damage cut. On the base damage, which is meaningful. Keep in mind, this also is an ability that feeds into itself a little bit. The more damage it deals in the early ticks, the more health you have missing, the more damage it does later on. So in the real world, this nerf is actually always bigger than it looks on paper because it does feed into itself. As far as the AP required to double the damage of the ability, keep in mind this is still somewhat taxing, but not too bad. You look at something like the old numbers here where it was 300 damage. It was probably 400 something AP to double. So this is a lot of why Morg mid can be viable, is her AP ratios are pretty reasonable. But yeah, 260 on a ability you can walk out of is, not necessarily the biggest damage ever, but that's why it's on the kit with Q and R, because you're going to stun them and then land it afterwards. Overall, not horrible. Definitely very, very strong. After these nerfs, should still be honestly quite strong. Now, as it gets half a second off his Q cooldown, not really the biggest champion overall. Nasus at a 49.2% win rate is not abysmal, but could stand to gain 1.5%. And so half second off the Q, 6 to 12% off the cooldown. Yeah, pretty solid. Nidalee, another complete dog champion. Ironic because she's a cat. 44.3% win rate in Plat plus jungle. Absolutely abysmal. So much like Karthus, we get a pretty nice mana cost decrease on Javelin Toss. An even nicer mana cost decrease on Primal Surge. I think it's a little funny. This is 50 to 70. This one's 50 to 90. To be fair, this does make sense. There is arguably an abuse case around like trying to play lane Nidalee and maxing heal first and being, unpushable out of lane. There's really an argument to be made for heals having mana cost scaling to slightly discourage maxing them and being unmovable. Healing is one of the mechanics that I think definitely always deserves strong mana costs. So I think, reasonable there. But either way, 0 to 20 damage increase on Javelin Toss. When you triple, it means 0 to 60 damage increase on Javelin Toss. 0 to 20 mana. 10 to 30 mana off Primal Surge. So here you go. Nidalee Q cost and damage. Yeah, meaningful stuff, right? This is quite substantial. The E cost here as well, quite substantial. Sure, all of Cougar Form's abilities are free, but still this champ could run out. Could run out of ways to cast stuff. So pretty meaningful stuff. Nidalee probably still overall going to be slightly weak. But Nidalee is one of those champions who has kind of been able to sit at like 47% win rate and be pro viable. So I don't know how they ever really fix that up. I think mana costs cheaper mana costs tend to help low elo more than high elo. Pros are generally better at navigating rough costs than weaker players. So lowering costs is a pretty easy way to low elo skew a champion. Reasonable stuff there. Cool beans. Next up, big update to Pantheon. They are trying to push him farther and farther and farther out of support and into other lanes. So Pantheon top was a 49% win rate champion, and Pantheon support was 49.7% win rate. So very, very slightly stronger Pantheon support. Pantheon support also about 14 times as picked, despite the power levels being close. Now there's an asterisk here, which is there are more viable top laners than there are viable supports. There's always one top laner every game, well, per team, and one support on every team per game. Which means when you're top lane, you have, 40 viable top lane picks. And Pantheon, to be fair, isn't 1 in 40 of the picks, but, that's the crowd he's against. In support, you've got 22. And so you're like, well, I'm already twice as likely to pick Pantheon based on just if I'm picking my champion at random from all viable picks, I should already expect to be picked twice as often for Pantheon. And this is sometimes how you get support skew, is just because there's just a smaller pool down there. It's same for bot lane, by the way, right? And it's also why you see things like Jhin and Ezreal have really, really, really high pick rates is because there's only like 20 total marksmen. I think it's actually like 21 or 22. But some of them have such a low win rate that they're not viable. So there's really only like 18 to 19 that you'd even consider picking. And it's well, yeah, with only 18 options, it looks real good. Just pick Jhin every game. Also, there's AD carry matches are really agnostic, but anyway, we're getting off topic. Either way, right? Riot is trying to push Pantheon off support back into solo lanes, and so they're doing a lot here. So, number one, dropping move speed by 10. This is good. This is an anti-roaming measure. I will point out that Pantheon is still among the fastest champions in League of Legends. 355 is the literal highest base move speed in the game. 345 is still very fast. Very few champions have this much. It's quite good. So still very fast, but not absurd. Now when he recalls, automatically get back to 5 stacks. I think that's a great change. Good job. I love that. I think it's really, really smart. Cool beans there. If you don't release Q, you get some more cooldown back. That's kind of nice. Still going on cooldown and not casting when hit by CC. Okay, great. Mana cost cheaper, so now if you are spamming Q to play lane, it is easier to do. And it's no longer slowing, right? It no longer has CC, so it's not a, well, when empowered, of course. So, you're going to, empower Q for damage. You can spam more Qs in lane, which is, a top lane wave clear thing, or a poke thing. All pretty positive stuff. It's less CC, which makes it less support skewed as well. So yeah, these are changes that feel a bit top lane focused. Cool beans. Next up, Shield Vault max second is more of a possibility, getting 0 to 80 damage based on rank. Now, this is a really, really substantial damage increase to the point where, from what I saw, it was not realistic to play this champion with W max second. The win rate delta was like a solid 3%, I think, compared to E second, which, yeah, you would need a buff this big to make it up. Will we ever see it? There's a chance. It's maybe possible, sure, but we'll see how it goes. Ultimately, Empower W is a pretty solid damage tool, of course, because you'd go for your big attacks afterwards. And hey, a bug fix that you can actually get your big attacks off if you empowered it. That's good stuff. Next up, less of a tower diver, right? Aegis Assault no longer blocks turret shots. That's a really, really big deal. Tower diving is a lot more common in bot lane with someone like Pantheon than it is in top lane. Although obviously it will still happen to some degree, and yes, this will still hurt top Pantheon some. But also keep in mind, support Pantheon roams more often, dives the mid laner, stuff like that. So this still hurts support Pantheon more than it hurts top Pantheon. The redirection slow is lesser, so you can get out since you're taking turret shots the whole time. And hey, by the way, Mortal Will empowerment no longer extends it from 1.5 to 2.5 seconds, but instead now gets move speed at the end. So it's, I run faster during the thing and then bam, and I'm out. Or quite possibly I'm chasing in, right? I'm so useful. I'm going to walk in, I'm going to auto attack, I'm going to get stuff done. This feels, again, a bit more carry focused as well, because you yourself then doing stuff with your abilities down is more of a laner with 3 items thing than a support with, just an Umbral Glaive. And then finally, Grand Starfall grants 10 to 30% armor penetration based on rank. This is really nice. This gives lane Pantheon, farm Pantheon some decent late game, the ability to fight tanks off a bit more, even fighters with, plated steel caps and stuff. You're still going to get more out of that one. Definitely going to be pretty meaningful. The spear that lands before now slows 50% and applies a spear's worth of damage unempowered in an area. That's pretty hype. So now you get some more damage on the Grand Starfall. That's pretty exciting. Ground indicators now appears for allies at start of channel. That's really good. Cool stuff. Okay, so let's break this down a little bit more. Okay, so here's the W damage. Now, I, again, don't really think this is going to be max second, but what it does mean is support Pantheon doesn't get level 14, but top lane Pantheon does. So with a top lane Pantheon getting to level 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, he's got another ability actually worth putting points into that's actually giving him some damage. 20 points of damage per rank is garbage. 40 per rank is actually playable. This could even go higher if you really wanted to, but keep in mind that Pantheon top lane, has an acceptable win rate of 49%. You don't need to give him that much. If this changes to 1.5%, that's exactly perfect. And, we may well get there based on the fact that this is a cheaper spell. You get stacks for free, and you get this armor pen. This is not bad either, of course. All right, we get armor penetration. Now, Pantheon, again, has very, very high stat scaling, right? 40 armor at level 1 is absurdly high. This is support levels of level 1 armor, by the way. We just saw, things like Kayn and Lee Sin were in the mid-30s. Pantheon is 40. Now, this, of course, is somewhat to make sure that he is a top laner. This is, hey, you are armor skewed. You are, going to be durable against the likes of Darius and Renekton. And hey, maybe less so against Kennen and Lissandra. Pushes him a little bit out of mid lane if he is armor skewed. But it also means that he's quite good against you know, Ashe and Jhin and, you know, the almost exclusively physical damage bot lane carries. But I don't think this is necessarily a problem. I think it's fine for Riot to come in and say, hey, we have skew here. Regardless, this is basically just this is just Pantheon's armor, level 1 to 18. I'm using him as my example champion because who cares? We need stats. We pick these stats. These are the stats. At level 6, it gets 10% armor pen, which means against someone with 55 armor, you do 4% more physical damage. You get rank 2 of the ability. Someone has like 70-ish armor. You do 9% more physical damage. This is a passive. Level 11 Pantheon just deals 10% more damage. Across the board. And it's even better against real tanks, of course. And then level 16 Pantheon, 30% armor pen, 17% more damage. This is really, 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 really substantial. This is very, 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 very good. Now, support Pantheon will still get level 6, of course, in a lot of these games. Like, you know, he is getting objectively more damage. But, you know, the compensation is you're doing just more damage, but you're not blocking turret shots, and you don't get 2.5 seconds of your shield. And by the way, I gotta say, I am glad this is gone, because as I said in almost every video, I hate duration scaling on durability mechanics, because they're freaking impossible to learn. I'll be honest, I play bot lane. I did not realize, to be fair, because none of my supports play Pantheon, that the E scaled in duration with empowerment. I didn't know that. Now, that's on me. Sure, I could have looked it up or anything, but like, I'm willing to bet some of you didn't know that either. And so when you're like, okay, he put the shield up, I'm going to time my spell, and so it got blocked. Well, yeah, because the duration goes up by 40%. Now, is that some egg on my face? Again, yes, it absolutely is. This is something I easily could have researched and figured out. I didn't know. But like, I'm glad it's gone. I really, really hate duration scaling on durability mechanics. Because it's just another thing people have to learn. Already 140 champions, already 700 abilities. We don't need 701. That's all I'm saying. But either way, moving on. Bunch of damage. Pretty late game skewed in this regard. Not blocking turrets anymore. Not staying invulnerable for as long. And, you know, this is going to hurt both sides. High level, more W damage. I'm expecting top lane Pantheon probably does gain win rate here. I'm expecting support Pantheon may well lose win rate here. We'll see what it goes. It's a pretty big change list, but I mean, these seem, all of them, like good changes. Like they are well aimed. They're going to do like positive things for the health of the game and the health of the champion. And if there needs to be follow-up changes, there will be. That's fine. If I have to make a guess, I'm going to guess that Pantheon's going to be slightly OP next patch. We'll see if it's true, but that's my guess. Next up, we have Samira, who, big update here. Oh my, the passive. Now, I want to point out, by the way, Samira bot lane, across 10.24, had a 50.35% win rate, but the Platinum Plus average win rate was 50.6. So Samira is, I would say, objectively, I mean, slightly, right? Like, it's probably within margin of error. Samira is slightly underpowered. Now, she is incredibly frustrating. What's interesting is the Samira nerfs from 10.24, as I said, were really, really well aimed. I said in that rundown that Samira should be in a very balanced, like, is a really well-sized nerf, should be in a balanced spot. Samira's pick rate went down some because people were like, yeah, she's a lot weaker, we're done. Her ban rate didn't move. Despite the fact that she was no longer OP, yeah, she could snowball, yeah, she could be frustrating, but like, she's no longer an overpowered champion. Her ban rate is still 72%. That is an absurdly high ban rate. It's double Jhin's, and Jhin is objectively the best AD carry in the game. So sure, yeah, with a ban rate that high, Riot absolutely must find ways to reduce frustration on the champion. And so what they do is say, look, instead of knocking up on immobilized enemies, like if you stun or you root or you fear, I don't get a knock up. Instead, she keeps already knocked up enemies in the air for 0.5. So if it's a knock up, she can extend the knock up. If it's not a knock up, she'll simply dash in range for a basic attack. Now again, if it was a stun, a 0.5 second knock up is not going to change much. You were already stunned, being knocked in the air doesn't change anything. If you are rooted, like by Leona E, it does, because now Leona E does not hit confirm into Leona knockup, into Leona Q, into Leona R. But like, if Nautilus goes for a dredge line, if you're fast enough, you're going to get knock up out of it. And you were anyway, you are afterwards, but you don't get a knock up off of Lux Q. You don't get a knock up off of, Morgana Q, things like that. So this is a meaningful power down. This is going to be felt. Now, Flare and Inferno Trigger, when they crit, are only going to heal for 2/3 as much. That's meaningful. That is a meaningful healing cut. End of the day, Samira is going to be objectively weak. Not by a ton. Like, she's not going to be, a complete dog champion, but Samira is going to be objectively weak. And I'm going to, and I haven't for a while, I'm going to not ban Samira. And I will play against Samira's, and I will play around her wind wall, and then I will win because my champion is going to be stronger than hers. You can ban her if you find her frustrating. That's your prerogative. That's fine. If you're frustrated by Samira, I'm not going to tell you you're not. Your feelings are relevant, but the facts are, Samira is not overpowered. She isn't now, and she certainly won't be after the patch. Next up, Seraphine. Now, Seraphine's interesting because Seraphine is about 6-1 picked in support. And compared to things like, Lulu and everything else, like, that is, less of an absurd support skew. It's still a support skew, sure, and hey, Pantheon's even more than that, right? But Seraphine is at least played moderately as a mid laner. Win rate wise, Seraphine is a 50% mid laner and a 49.8% support. It's not a substantial difference, but she is technically slightly stronger in mid. Her ban rate is pretty small, 8%. That's fine. It's it's there. Like, she does get some bans, but it's not really absurd. And so she's getting basically buffs to further push her toward mid. Now again, flat plus win rate average is 50.6, so she's objectively weak in mid and objectively weak in support. And so she's getting buffs that, again, try to push her into mid, are aimed toward mid lane. So health growth is going to be up by 10 per level. And then also the personal shield is increased by 50%. The shield value, by the way, was always champion level based, not rank based, so that Seraphine in mid can max QE for damage and still deal full shielding. That was always kind of the intent. You instead get like some cooldown incentive off of the W. I'm pretty sure that is exactly what people are doing, but hey, she now can use that to survive burst more often. Now, this is a pretty big set of buffs. Seraphine is probably going to be a slightly overpowered mid laner as a result. It's not going to be absurd. She's not doing any more damage. She's not doing any more CC. She's not roaming any harder. She's not wave clearing any faster, but she is objectively much more durable, and especially against things like assassins or burst mages. So her health up quite a bit. Now actually crest 2,000 health. Sure, yep. About where I expect people to land in the first place. That seems fairly reasonable overall. That's just where the numbers are in League of Legends nowadays. And then the W is just simply 50% more, so easy to look at there. Next up, we have Shyvana, who gets a new passive on ARAM and Howling Abyss, ARAM, Howling Abyss, and Nexus Blitz. You basically get it for cannon minions, super minions, and health relics. Enemy side health relics, basically, counter jungling, right? On Nexus Blitz, she gets it when nearby epic monsters, jungle monsters, rough scuttlers are killed. Additionally, Dragon Fury Generation for the same. Okay. Night SR, moving on. Taliyah getting a big set of changes. Another mage jungler that is not doing very well. Obviously, Taliyah is quite unpopular. However, Taliyah is played in 4 roles and is successful in 3. Her pick rates are certainly low. Taliyah has never been a popular champion because it turns out she's just not really very compelling from a visual design. Like, that's just true. Like, it is. All right? Taliyah does a lot of things similar to Lux, and Lux has 75 times her pick rate. Even when Taliyah is objectively stronger than Lux. Anyway, Taliyah changes. These are pretty small, but I want to point some things out, okay? So here's Taliyah's win rate by role, and it's jungle, then mid, then bot farm, and then support. In jungle, 43.3. Wow, garbage champion. In mid, 52.5. In bot, 50.2. In support, 52.9. She is objectively fine to actually very strong, bordering on OP in most lanes. Now, as a farming bot laner, she's not ideal, but in mid and support, she's objectively quite good and totally worth playing. If you like playing Taliyah, go for it. She's good. If you don't like playing Taliyah, that's fine, don't. Her pick rate, of course, incredibly small. It sums up to less than 1%. Ban rate, 0.04%. Yeah, of course. But basically, Taliyah is a completely passable, playable mage mid and support. And I mean, good in those, and then a totally passable bot farm champion. In jungle, yeah, she's complete trash. And so, big Q damage increase. Here you go. Bam. Here's Taliyah's Q monster damage. It goes from 210 to 510 to 350 to 850. So, yeah. 140 more damage, 2/3 more damage per set of Qs is a really big deal. This means killing Gromp, killing Big Krug, killing Red, killing Blue is a whole lot faster. Your first camp, a whole lot faster. Very big deal. This is a massive clear speed increase. Her ability to solo Dragon, her ability to burn down Baron with a squad, to burn down Rift Herald with a squad, all really big deal. Really good stuff. Do want to point out that, again, when I can find it, I will put it in there easily. It's about 350, 375, sub 400 AP to double the damage of the ability. Yeah, and I want to point out, this here is the base damage of the ability against non-monsters. Her damage numbers are quite good. She does successful things. She can kill minion waves reasonably well. She roams pretty good. She has really high burst damage overall. She's objectively a totally solid champion. And it turns out being a mid laner who can roam, or a support who can roam, is really good. Turns out those are her two best roles. No one's really surprised. But I actually kind of agree with this, that despite her being a completely garbage jungler, it is still her most popular role. Because honestly, people liked playing Taliyah jungle. And that's where the buffs are, right? The buffs are trying to make Taliyah jungle a thing again. There's probably still more work to be done, but this is a really good first step. Great. Again, probably still going to be pretty weak. You have to gain a lot of win rate here. She needs 7% win rate bump, which this won't be it, but good start. Next up, Twitch. Twitch is in a pretty bad spot, although not as bad as you might think. Twitch is played in 3 roles commonly: jungle, AD carry, well, or AP carry, but jungle, bot farm, and support. For some reason, support Twitch is his most popular role. Support Twitch is hot garbage. Support Twitch is weaker than jungle Taliyah, but has 10 times the pick rate. For the sake of me, well, look, if you're against me, please play support Twitch. I would love Freelo. But wow, jungle Twitch and support Twitch are horrendously bad. Bot Twitch is not great at 46% win rate, but, stronger than Gragas and Aurelia at least. Needs the buffs, to be clear. So Taliyah is getting, or not Taliyah, sorry, but Twitch is getting a flat 10% more attack speed on Q. Venom Cask is a 5% increase slow, and Spray and Pray is 5, 10, 15 more bonus attack damage. Now, I want to point out real quick, though, that Spray and Pray is totally meaningful for AP Twitch as well. Sure, AP Twitch is not critting this bonus AD, but you are still auto-attacking to play AP Twitch, and the bonus AD still filters into Contaminate damage as well. So AP Twitch is still getting a lot of value out of Spray and Pray. AP Twitch and AD Twitch seem to have pretty similar win rates, so I can't really say which one's objectively better overall. And you can kind of see that the buffs are fairly agnostic of build. So here's Twitch's attacks per second before and after the Q buff, and yeah, pretty substantially done. The slow overall, again, a bit more meaningful as well. Yeah. Again, this champion needs to gain about 4% win rate. This gets pretty close to that. This is a very big set of buffs to Twitch, and yeah, he should feel them. Next up, we get Yasuo and Yone, both gaining 1% attack speed growth. Yasuo across his 3 lanes of top, mid, and bot, 45.1, 46.5, and 45.3. Yone across top and mid, 43.5, oof, and 45.7, less oof. Yone top is definitely not successful. But as mid laners, they are they're as passable as Twitch bot, right? They're not great, but they're not. They're bad. To be clear, they're pretty bad. So yeah, they're getting 1% attack speed growth. Now I want to point out there is a bias here in the win rates. There are a lot of people who are still going Rageblade on these champions, and Rageblade is very, very bad on them. So the win rates are being deflated by Rageblade builds. Those need to go away. The win rate will gain simply off of people building more intelligently, the same way that Ezreal's win rate gained off of people building him more intelligently. Varus' win rate gaining off of people building him lethality and Emax second. It's moving on over time, slowly getting there. And oh, by the way, here's the they have the exact same base stats as far as I could tell. So, or the same base attack speed and attack speed per level. So here's their new numbers. And yeah, 12% increased attack speed by the end of the game is, quite good, of course. So Rengar is now having jungle-specific buffs. Rengar top actually is 50.4% win rate, totally passable top laner. But with 5 times the pick rate is Rengar jungle. And that is 43 point... Actually, not even 5 times. I was looking at the wrong thing. With almost identical pick rate is Rengar jungle, but that is a 43.3% win rate champion. Now, there's probably some build shenanigans people can do, probably better item builds out there that people haven't tried yet, or haven't tried enough. But still, definitely in a horrible spot. This champ could stand to gain almost 7% win rate to be in a balanced spot. This is not going to be that, but now gets even more healing for monsters. Because before, Battle Royale, right, is you heal, I believe, half the damage taken when you pop it. This is now 100% damage taken for monsters, so you can full heal, whatever big chunk happened out of, Dragon or Baron or Gromp or whatever. So that's going to be useful, but also deals a flat character level scaling bonus damage. So man, is that going to be really nice. Popping double W for the, what is it, like 60 base damage, 50 base damage, right? 115, and to be fair, right, like you're doing this like level 2, right? Let's say you're doing red and then you go and go take some chickens. You're doing 120, 120. You're doing 240 damage off of the double cast. You are nearly one-shotting the small chickens at that point. Like, this is a really, really, really big deal. And plus, they're going to burn down, so you probably do one-shot the chickens with the double roar, the really poor animation double roar. It's what AP Rengar does, and it looks really stupid. But you max this last in general because you're going to get your damage abilities first, and that's fine because it scales with character level. So, like, you're level 8, cool. Double roar does 300 damage. Like, to everything in the camp. So if I'm not hitting, blue, red, or Gromp, I am, probably using Empowered Battle Roar on purpose because the Battle Roar now does the most damage to all jungle monsters. And I think crucially so, you're going to be healthy the whole time because you're going to get another, big heal chunk going through. Like, this is really, really powerful. This is really good. Probably not 7% win rate, but Rengar is going to be in a much better spot. Next up, we have Warwick. Big tooltip bug fix. There was a bunch wrong. The damage really was 10 to 44. Now it's 12 to 46. It also has a bonus AD ratio and an AP ratio on it, which I find kind of interesting. So 2 flat damage, AD ratio, AP ratio. So, maybe you try a demonic embrace or something. Probably not, but maybe there's a Nashor's Tooth build out there. This is more exploratory than I think them really thinking AP Warwick is good. It's just there for funsies. Who cares, really? But the bonus AD ratio is basically saying, look, Warwick's best builds are actually all the tank builds. It's all the Sunfire stuff, and him going like Stridebreaker or Goredrinker or Eclipse or whatever. None of those, or Triforce, none of those are successful. So let's go and do some bonus AD ratio stuff. Now, I will say, they very easily could have, and I think honestly, there's some consideration that they should have made this a total AD ratio. Because that would allow Trinity Force to build into this. To say, hey, Trinity Force Warwick is going to increase your total AD, which then gets to filter back into Eternal Hunger's bonus damage. And you just rejigger these numbers, right? You find, okay, yeah, 50% of my total AD at level 1 is like 50% of 60, which is like 9, which is like, oh, well, that works. And then, we can actually do it here, right? Because, Warwick's base AD is 65, and then it scaled up to 46, which means it was 116, right? So like 15% of 116 is 120 thereabouts, sorry, 12, and 50% of 65 is 9 and change, right? 9, almost 10. So like you could have very easily done these numbers with a total AD ratio instead and allowed Triforce to be better. It wouldn't be a very big win rate change, but like if Triforce is too weak of an item on Warwick and you want item diversity, it is a very easy change to say, look, this is mathable, very easily mathable. We can make it a total AD ratio, and then you bump up Trinity Force win rate by like 0.5% or something, and it's a bit more of an option. easy low-hanging fruit there as a future change down the line. But hey, by the way, again, tooltip fix. None of these are actually functionality changes. But let's talk about what's going on here, which is, hey, at plus 100 AD, let's say I build some real damage items. This is, of course, the passive with the total attack damage rolled in, like of the actual champion, because you can't apply it otherwise. So it is a pretty small damage increase, not counting AD. But hey, if you buy plus 100 bonus attack damage, you know, here's what it would be, plus 100 AD. Here's afterwards with, you know, plus 17 on top. And yeah, you know, it's pretty solid. You are getting rewarded more off of building raw AD. Cool. Again, they have to bridge like a 3% win rate gap on items. You might not quite get there, but it's cool to see it get closer, right? It's getting closer, and that's good. Warwick is was a 48.6% top laner and a 49.3% jungler. So in aggregate, he was underperforming. But again, his best mythics were definitely all the Sunfire upgrades, and tank Warwick was OP. His win rates with all the Sunfire upgrades were above 50%. Technically, even those builds are gaining 2 flat damage on the passive, so it is objectively stronger there as well. But could stand to use power, of course, elsewhere for AD builds, which is why I'm happy to have this change. This is a cool change. I like this a lot. Next up, we have Talon. And Talon is interesting because Talon's win rate in mid lane is technically 50.5%, which is below the Plat Plus average of 50.6. That said, gaining 0 to 20 damage on Rake is, I think, quite funny. Because split 50-50 are Talon Q max builds and Talon W max builds. And Q max builds have a 3.5% win rate bump. W max is 49.7. Q max is 53.3. That's biased a little bit by the fact that it only measures games you were high enough to, like, for the website to know that you were maxing this and then that. So any of like those specific pieces of data are going to be inflated, but you can still see, right, the 3.6% win rate bump by going Q max. You might say, Phreak, that's silly because Talon only Q maxes in melee matchups where it's correct to do so. Well, I looked at that as well. I looked at the 13 most played mid laners and then looked at Talon's win rate against each of those 13 with Q max first or W max first. And against literally all of those 13, except exactly Orianna for some reason. This includes ranged champions like Victor and Twisted Fate and Ahri, and obviously all the melee ones as well. QMax still preserved a 2 to 3 to 4% win rate bump. Every talent in every build in every game, with the exception of, for some reason, Orianna, I don't know why, but it preserved no matter how I splice up the data, that remains true. QMax is the right build for Talon, which means Talon is really super duper OP. But only half the people know it. Half the people are building him wrong. Now, by Rake gaining damage on rank up, we are, of course, clearly buffing W max first because you're going to get this power sooner and you're going to get your wave clear sooner. You're going to go out and do stuff, and that's going to be fine. But it's really worth noting that the better builds are still just max Q, get this value in level 8 or later, and BOP and just one-shot your lane opponent. That's the real build. Or really, it's, go roam and one-shot the AD carry. So here's the damage numbers, though. Technically, people are more commonly maxing W first, though it is within like 2% of each other. Total damage on this ability is reasonable. 250 is not absurd. This is probably part of why 90 becomes 230 is not that much scaling, all things considered. It's like 2.5x to max it, which is pretty low scaling. So now it's, almost 3x, which is, reasonable scaling for an ability. I think any ability that doesn't go 3x between rank 1 and max rank tends to not be that good to put points into. Sometimes you have to, sometimes there's reasons for it. But usually my rule of thumb is you're looking at 3x or better. Otherwise, it's kind of bad. Lo and behold, Qmax first is better. Then we get Wukong. Wukong is a totally solid top laner, 52.6%, but a weak jungler at 49.4%, so could stand to gain a full percentage point. And indeed, Nimbus Strike just does 50% more damage to monsters, which, yeah, that'll help him kill monsters faster. That will help Wukong jungle. Great. Next up, we get a bunch of item changes. Some things were overperforming, some things were not. So the Collector no longer works against Minions, basically. Minions and small monsters, which, yeah, occasionally will ruin your last hitting. Collector was, I mean, really, 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 really commonly the second item on AD carries. And poach even for like just like basic lethality users, because it was just like, oh, I get to wave clear faster. Like, it's great. Yeah, I mean, the item is overperforming. I think it's totally fine that it really just only executes champions. That said, in my play, I have felt like there have been bugs where Collector has not executed when I have absolutely brought things below 5%. So I'm not sure what's going on there, but I feel like I have had bugs there. Would like to see that fixed up at some point. Regardless, I think it's totally fine to do. I think it was kind of wonky that it executed minis anyway. Next up, Muramana. This is a really, really big deal. This is such a big nerf. Only procs, well, still procs on attacks, but now only procs on physical damage spells. So goodbye to Rise and Cassiopeia and Orianna going Muramana. Now, to be clear, I think that is good design. I am glad that this is going away for them, because honestly, like, it really feels like there's an argument like, oh, but why don't you let people be inventive? It's like, dude, you're buying a bunch of longswords on a mage because this random unique passive is too good. Like, no, that's not okay, right? Like, yeah, I truly believe like Muramana should be out of the hands of those champions. That said, this still hurts a lot of people who weren't really abusing it. So, Kaisa W no longer applies Muramana. Ezreal ult and Ezreal E no longer apply Muramana. Jace melee W and E no longer apply Muramana. And there's a lot of other champions like this, you know, Lucian W, etc., etc. There are plenty of AD carries who have spells that deal magic damage. And now that we're doing more and more of this kind of typing, right? We're like, no, physical only. I talked about this with Lee Sin E as well. Now, a lot of this has been done intentionally by the game designers because, in general, for most games, for most times, champions will end with more armor than magic resist. And a champion like Lee Sin is really never going to buy Lord Dominus Regards or Cyrilda's Grudge, right? And so a champion like that, designers will come in and say, look, this ability deals magic damage, because they know it will fall off too hard otherwise. To say, look, we want this ability to fall off less, so it's going to do magic damage. Don't worry, this is really a buff. I mean, this happened a little bit with, like, Akali E, for example. Although Akali E actually buys Sork shoes and stuff, but, you know, the point still stands. Champions do have more armor than MR. I mean, look at basically any AD carry ever. Unless you go, like, Merc Treads and the Stat Shard and Mercurial Scimitar, you will have more armor than MR at most points in the game. I mean, Mercurial Scimitar plus, like, just character leveling is, like, 66-ish MR, and every AD carry's armor goes higher than that. And that's with buying a Scimitar, right? And then even with the Stat Shard, level 18, still, the armor is higher. So, like, this is true. Like, the math does line up. But now that, okay, not like Lisa could buy this anyway, but, like, the more these AD carries getting punished, I say punished, can't use an item built for them because their abilities deal magic damage. Again, Lucian W, Ezreal spells, like, I know AP Ezreal is a thing and people care about that, and there's stuff going on. Like, it's not the cleanest ever, but I don't know. There's still a large part that kind of hurts where it's like, but I want to buy lethality and Black Cleaver and Armor Pen. I just don't get value out of it, and that part does feel bad, and I don't know how you solve that overall. You know, in the world where these champions still are good, but more and more, I would really like to see these champions be mono damage type. Ezreal's winning. What do I buy? Nothing. He went Ruin King and deals split physical magic damage. I don't know. I kind of dislike that sort of stuff. Rageblade now converts crit chance properly and leaves you 0 crit chance, so all the interactions that might have existed are now gone. Zeke's Convergence is being made smaller, 50 less health, 5 less armor. Mark duration is a lot longer, and the Convergence bonus damage is a lot higher. So now we're going into some more of the damage, or some more of the items here that are going to be doing. Now Zeke's, I would say, was overperforming, to be fair. That item was doing really, really, really well. So here's Zeke's before and after. We have to, I guess, go down to like 190% here, I think. Okay, now it fits. Cool. Zeke's definitely doing you could argue a bit too well. It was basically every support's second item built, or at least every tank support's second item built was certainly performing really, really well. It's a balance thing, right? It's like, hey, these items are slightly too good, so it's a nerf. It's too good. So losing some health, losing some armor. Here you go. Damage down a fair bit, of course. You are paying for the passive, but yeah, the passive is doing more damage. The mark has lasted for longer, which is a really big deal, by the way. I think this is fine. Arm Guard, I complained about it a lot when the patch first came out. Mages were too good against assassins, theoretically, against physical damage assassins. Arm Guard now gives 10 less AP. So they don't, survive any less well. They just have 10 less AP when buying the best item in the game against, physical damage assassins. So it went from being 100% gold efficient and then also giving 30 more armor to being, hey, you're actually paying for this passive. You should probably get the stats in. If you weren't buying Arm Guard first item against AD mids, you were kind of trolling. This item was absurd. And you were just wrong if you weren't buying this item because it was just too good. Now you don't get a free instant tick of damage as auto attackers, so this is going to further hit some of the fighter junglers. Fair enough. Support items, some cleanups. First of all, Battleglass Mirror was hot trash. Talked about that in the patch rundown for preseason. Definitely trash. They're making some of the build paths a bit nicer for things like Ardent Sensor, not using Blasting Wand. Same for Flowing Water. It's going to be double Amp Tome. That's a good thing. And then otherwise, they're making mythics cost less money, but do slightly less good things. So Battleglass Mirror is 100 gold cheaper. Putrefy just has a recipe update to result in that. Again, Ardent Sensor and Flowing Water now is double Amp Tome instead of Blasting Wand, so you can get components more easily. That's cool stuff. Imperial Mandate and Co. All these items are 200 gold cheaper, but their buffs are slightly different. Now, a special thing about Mandate is the upfront damage is down by 40%. So things like Imperial Mandate Ash, and just like playing Imperial Mandate Swain or whatever, because it's free damage, YOLO. It's like, okay, I'm personally okay with Mandate being playable on Ash and playable on like carry Swain and things like that. I think that's fine, as long as it is not the best option on the champion. As long as Mandate is not just the overwhelming best option, I'm okay with whatever the power level actually is. It just needs to be the appropriate power level. But it's cheaper so that supports can get it more quickly and then move on to their builds, because supports are just not really able to finish items all that quickly overall. Or they don't get that many items just period because their income's low. So Mandate is a bit cheaper. Moonstone Renewer is cheaper, and the healing up front is actually better, but the long form healing is lower. Locket is cheaper, but the shield is down by 20 to 35. Shrill is cheaper, but the damage is down by 5 per tick. So here's all of our numbers. Again, we had Arm Guard already. So Battleglass Mirror, no longer absolute trash. It is 98% efficient. We got there. We did it. The item is playable. Yay! This wasn't hard to see, but we got there in the end. That's good. Imperial Mandate, because it's a lot cheaper, is actually much more gold efficient. So support's got, they have gold efficient stats. Like this mythic just gives you Coordinated Fire in the mythic passive for basically free. That is outstanding. And considering that the mythic passive for 15 ability power is going to turn on from your Shard of True Ice or whatever, that's there right away. You're like, that's just online. So immediately this item is just absolutely great. Mandate is still very, very good, very efficient, very solid. Gonna feel good. I still like the fact that Mandate and Renewer have the exact same stats. I think that's awesome. I'm a big fan of that. I really, really enjoy those being super comparable. I kind of would have liked, to be honest, like Locket and Shirelius to be the same thing. Like a lot of why it feels like tanks aren't buying Shirelius, because I've noticed like Locket is by and large, like every tank just buys Locket and they don't buy Shirelius because it feels bad to have to buy mana regen. It feels bad on Braum to waste mana on that kind of stuff. Yeah, okay, sure, totally Winged Moonplate makes sense and there's other stuff going on here, but I would have liked to see, maybe less haste, but you get more move speed, but you still, maybe you're still running, some of the other stuff, the armor MR. I don't know. It's consideration, something I kind of thought about. I think the more you can make things line up, the better. But Locket and Shirelius are kind of like hard to compare because, this is absolutely more durability, right? there's really no chance to think that, 200 health, 35 armor, 35 MR, and then 35 is because of the consecrate passive coming in. Like it's just so much more durability. That's like, well, I'm playing Braum or Nautilus. I need a frontline. Like Shirley's, you're just so frail, like playing that item, and yet you're paying the same amount of money for it. So I mean, you're really just, instead of getting 35 armor MR, you're getting 5 move speed, and that's just like not a consideration you're willing to take. Now I know this, you want this item to like be considerable on. It's like supposed to be the middle ground. It's like it's like the less tanky option. Like I can buy it on Janna and shepherd the team in, and I can buy it on Nautilus and just kite back a bit and try to be safe. But I don't know. I think you'd have a hard time having tanks want to buy Shrelias when the only tank sets it gives is 1,000 gold of health and costs 2,500 gold. I think you'll be really hard pressed to find a tank that wants to spend this much money on not durability, where they don't have much money for anything else anyway. They'll just be so fragile. But again, much more efficient on the items. Right, 96% on Moonstorm Manure, 95% on Lucky Iron Solari, and then, 75% on Shirley's Battle Song. You could argue that we're undercosting move speed a bit, but I really don't think it's actually true. Move speed is actually just a cheap stat in League of Legends. Riot doesn't make you, Riot literally does not make you pay for move speed. They just throw it onto random items. I haven't basically seen any items where you're actually paying for the move speed in any meaningful way. Like, we're going to see down the line, there's going to be buffs to Zeal. You're literally paying 0 gold for Zeal's move speed. Actually 0. That's, I don't know, concerning. But we also have some more numbers to look at. Like, we can actually break down Imperial Mandate's damage. The upfront damage on the first half is indeed down exactly to 60% of the numbers before. I'm cutting the first 5 levels out because I think that's reasonable to do. This is the total damage, though, because you cannot do the other half without doing the first half. So if you're, repeatedly applying the first half, you're having this happen. But if you are applying the entire buff, then you're getting this, right? So Imperial Mandate, otherwise, like if we can look at these numbers again, right, is just cheaper and just deals more total damage if you're getting total damage. Now, obviously, you're doing the front half much more than the total, and after the second trigger, you're actually there with it. But, theoretically, if you're like really ethical, it's a strict buff. Moonstorm Manure, the upfront heal again up by a flat 10, pretty nice. At full amp though, it is down by 15%. Locket's shield down by 8% pretty much at all times. Shrelia's Battle Song damage, not really down by much at all. It doesn't really matter. But again, I think Shrelia's build path is a little bit too confused to be usable on tanks. So I would like to see that updated at some point. Next, we go to big AD carry item updates. 5 AD on Gale Force, 5 AD on Essence Reaver, 150 gold off of Zeal, 200 gold off the Rapid Fire Cannon, Phantom Dancer, and Mortal Reminder. This is a typo here. This is actually Mercurial Scimitar is gaining 10 AD and losing out and gaining 100 cost. Now 100 cost, totally worth 10 AD, totally worth it. But this is actually what's changing to Mercurial Scimitar. It's 200 gold off of Mortal Reminder. Leonardo's Regards also gets 5 AD, and Infinity Edge now gives you a flat 35 bonus crit damage if you're at 60%, which means you buy IE exactly third, and it's dank AF. So let's talk about this. Gale Force up 5 AD, also by the way, unless I missed it. The cooldown down to 60 as well. This is a really, really, really usable cooldown. I like this change a lot. I'm going to be playing a lot more Gale Force. It's going to feel really good. I'm going to like this a lot. It's going to be pretty fun. Okay, what else we got going on here? So, Gale Force, 100% gold efficient now. We got there. We got 100% gold efficient, and hey, look, we're not paying for the mythic passive. The move speed, it's just there on top. We're basically just saying, okay, we bought the item, we get Cloudburst and the mythic passive for free. If Cloudburst is, weaker than the other passives, then sure, fair enough. Essence Reaver was actually already quite gold efficient. I mean, keep in mind, like, Spellblade literally already exists as a different item, as Sheen, but just for AD crit and haste, like, this item is already efficient. This item is outstanding. I know I was seeing comments online, people saying, oh, Sivir is screwed. Sivir's win rate is not that bad. Especially with the Essence Reaver gaining 10 AD in the previous patch and now gaining 5 more AD here. Like, yes, it is still less than old Essence Reaver, sure. But you're getting Spellblade for free over the top of it, which to me, I just take as, look, this is an objectively better Essence Reaver. Flat out, this is a better Essence Reaver than 2020, than season 10. This is now a better Essence Reaver for all these champions. This is an outstanding item. This is good. This is a very, very good cornerstone. 55 AD is good enough that you're going to feel comfortable buying this item and being good about it. Yes, 40 was too low. You were a caster 80 carry with a 40 attack damage second item. Not okay. But 50, yeah, reasonable. And again, you get an AD ratio on the spell blade, so you can really do some decent chunking with this. I mean, you're going to stack a lot of raw AD. This is going to be a pretty big spell blade hit. Zeal, again, we are paying exactly 0 gold for 7% move speed. Because this is how Riot actually balances move speed. Like, I know, I've talked to people on that team who, you know, are really convinced that, like, move speed is this really outstanding stat, and it's really good, like, and they'll say things, like, playing with one of them, and this is not even meant as flame, this is just, like, this is in their minds. It's like, I mean, I've been delivered the line, like, how much move speed do champions gain when we give them 5, or how much win rate do champions gain when we give them 5 flat move speed? And 5 flat move speed, by the way, is 1.5%. Like, it's very, very small. And indeed, like, a 5 or 10 move speed bump, or nerf, whatever, is in fact fairly meaningful. It's like a, you know, 1%-ish win rate on the champion, which is, you know, totally a solid bump. And, you know, to be fair, 7% move speed costs, you know, 280 gold. I mean, that's the same as getting 8 AD, roughly. I mean, we can do equals AD divided by 280. Oh, wait, sorry, equals, okay, nope. Yeah, about 8 AD, I was right. So, I mean, I guess the other thought is, so let's see, what would, now that I'm just doing it, because why not, 0.07 time, let's go 345. Yeah, so I mean, if we gave a champion 24 bonus move speed, that is a lot, right? That goes from the slowest champion in the game to the fastest champion in the game. Gold value, that's like giving them 8 attack damage. I'll be honest, like, if you gave Caitlyn, if you took her from 325 to 350 move speed, or took her base AD from 60 to 68, I'm not convinced those are different, like, those are so highly separated. Like, realistically, I'm not convinced that those aren't the same size of buff. 8 AD and 25 move speed? Those are pretty close. I'll be honest. Those feel pretty close, you know? Now, to be clear, everyone always buys Boots of Speed pretty early on. Like, it's really, really valuable. I don't really want to go down a long diatribe on move speed versus attack damage and stuff like that, but, like, these are in the same ballpark. These are not so horribly costed that we're, like, not even close. I mean, Zeal was, honestly, a pretty efficient item, right? You were getting 7% move speed off of the Zeal, and indeed, it was a, you know, 111% efficient item. Now it's 127% efficient item. I mean, Zeal is outstanding. Just the awkwardness of Zeal is the fact that, well, until you have Infinity Edge, crit chance costs too much. And until you have enough raw AD, attack speed kind of also costs too much. Like, the awkwardness of Zeal is the fact that you don't actually want non-AD on your second item. Just, that's how DPS math works. That's just where the items line up, basically. So, you know, really, really cheap Zeal means you're getting a lot of, you know, stats that are not really what you want, but they're all provided cheaply, and off you go. Rapid Fire Cannon, like the rest of the items, are getting a lot cheaper. Now, again, attack speed, crit chance, move speed, it's not a lot of stats, right? Before, you were paying 745 gold for Sharpshooter. Yeah, that's pretty bad. Like, theoretically, Energize costs 488 for 120 damage. Theoretically. So, you know, you can't really hate because people do buy Kirchai's Shard and feel good about it. So I really can't say these items are definitely bad, but on a DPS level, you know, you're getting 1600 gold of DPS for 2700. If your job is doing consistent damage, right, that, you know, this isn't the item for it. Now, of course, it's not. It's Rapid Fire Cannon. The entire point of Rapid Fire Cannon is I do one attack from far away, which means Energize is valuable and the range is valuable and all that stuff is valuable. It doesn't matter that it's not an efficient DPS item, and that's fair, like, totally reasonable. I just, you know, have a tie rate against RFC. I think the item has frequently been pretty bad, and people just like buying it because it feels satisfying and don't know to do any math. But either way, yes, big plus to this Zeal upgrade. Phantom Dancer, again, another item where all you're doing is buying pure DPS, and, you know, down to 2,500 total gold cost means if you're able to get the attacks in, then yes, indeed, you are getting, you know, 3,300 gold worth of stats for 2,500 gold, which is, yeah, that's great. That's outstanding. As long as you can get those, I believe it's 5 auto attacks off, which that can be tough, don't get me wrong. But if you can get them, this is a lot of stats, right? This is 80% attack speed, 40% move speed. It is a lot. You are a kiting machine if you get that going, especially if you're a Halo Blades champion, right? If you're, I don't love it on Tristana, but, Tristana and Kai'Sa are champs that are going to attack a lot quickly. They're going to run Halo Blades, and then they're going to be really, really fast zipping around with a ton of attack speed, and they're going to scale. So that's going to be pretty solid. Mortal Reminder, again, assuming this is actually going the way I expected it to, you are basically, this is what I said before about the healing reduction items during the preseason update, is that these items are very, very efficient. You are paying very little for the Grievous Wounds. And now, yeah, fully upgrading all the way to Mortal Reminder, you are indeed paying very little for the rest of Grievous Wounds. 2,500 like the other ones, 2,400 gold worth of stats, and then Grievous Wounds basically cost you nothing. And to be clear, like you already, to build out the rest of Mortal Reminder, you already had to buy Executioners, which means it is purely efficient to just finish the upgrade. Not only are you turning on a Mythic passive, but this whole thing costs you 1,700. It costs you 1,700 to get, 5 AD and then all of these stats. For 1,500, that is outstanding. Plus your Mythic passive. Like, if you ever go Executioners, you should absolutely finish Mortal. Absolutely, absolutely finish Mortal. Incredibly strong item. And then we get Mercurial Scimitar, where, again, technically this is efficient. The QSS, just the upgrade itself. Indeed, 760 is the cost for that one. People are happy to buy QSS by itself. But, once again, this is another item that is efficient to finish upgrading. Again, you spend 760, for functionally the QSS upgrade after Magic Resist. And, you're getting a lot more than that, right? You're only paying 360 for it by the end. You're basically gaining 400 extra gold worth of stats. So you should go ahead and finish Scimitar, right? Get the extra AD, get the extra crit chance, finish the item off. It's worth doing. And yeah, you're not paying all that much for the QSS by the end of it all. Now, it is still only 30 MR on the item, which is fairly low. There's no shield on the top. You really do want to think about getting Maw and Mortius in some of these cases. If you really are afraid of dying to someone like Veigar, you can still get Maw and Scimitar, like it's fine. Or you could have gone Shield Bow plus Scimitar, and that's pretty reasonable also. Wits End can kind of fit in there in some cases. Like there's some half-decent MR items that really are out there that people aren't, I think, completely trying. But yeah, reasonable stuff. Then we have Lord Dominic's. And we have, once again, another fully 100% efficient item. This is to be fair, a slightly made up value for Armor Pen. This was, I think, using old Lord Dominic's from the 2020 season. But regardless, it's again 5 AD for no price. It's a gold efficient item. Giant Slayer, which is quite good, is free. Giant Slayer, by the way, is about as good as the 25% Armor Pen. So, this is a 30% damage increase item against tanks is like roughly what this item says. And that's very, very good. For, not that much, right? You're paying 875 you're kind of paying 875 for both passives if you really be like really kind of funky about it. And then Infinity Edge, again, none of the top halves changed really at all. It's just, instead of going 16 to 40 because you wouldn't ever buy it first, it's just a flat 35% crit damage. That means you're going, right, the 1 to 215, it's just a flat 175 becomes 210. And so here's Infinity Edge crit damage. So theoretically, if you bought it second or second with a cloak, it's weaker because it doesn't do anything. Sure. But as soon as you buy it third, and then even through your fourth item, it is a strictly stronger item. Most people who were buying IE were buying it third. So for the vast majority of players, you are living in this world. You're living in this world where you're at 3 or 4 completed items. IE was coming in third anyway, and your crit damage, total damage from critting, is up, 6% right away, eventually 2, eventually 1%. Is also not terribly so far below the 2.25 from, the previous season. It's certainly still lower, don't get me wrong, but, it's a pretty reasonable crit damage, all things considered. What I will say is technically, yes, full builds are in fact slightly weaker to the tune of, 1 or 2% less total damage on the crit. Not a massive deal, but, could be considered. Certainly the case, but this is, overall, and keep in mind, right, like, most games do not go to 5 items, and then even then, this also assumes your last item is not, like, Maw of Malmortius or Guardian Angel or something, right? This assumes your last item actually is a crit item, and again, not only have to get to max items, but that last item has to be a crit item as well, Both of those are debatable. So overall, definitely above the 80 carries. Finally, Champion's feeling a bit sluggish with low haste for mages. Pretty much the only other good haste item has been Cosmic Drive. So every single item now is 20 haste. All the AP mana mythics are 20 haste, full stop. It means Luden's Tempest is being nerfed down to 6 Magic Pen. Now, personally, this is a little wacky, but I would like to see this be at 7. Just because Sork Shrews are 18. So 18 plus 7 gives us 25, and so we have just round numbers for Magic Pen. Instead, we're going to be at 24, 29, 34, and it's not the biggest deal ever. I'm just saying it's already not a round number. Why not pick the one that gets you to a multiple of 5 at the end? But a strict buff to Everfrost. This is not even necessarily a strict buff. This is 10% more spells, but at the cost of 2 to 3% less damage to champions. I probably take the more spells, to be clear. Luden's is probably still getting buffed, but Everfrost obviously getting buffed by more. I think Everfrost is still complete crap. I think this item is still terrible. The hitbox lags behind the particle effect. So the hitbox is actually really, really sluggish. That's a pretty big deal overall. It is not a good item. But Luden's Tempest, technically, if you're going by gold efficiency, it is more gold efficient now. You're only paying 4%. 133 gold for Echo plus the Mythic passive. Everfrost is actually just gold efficient outright in terms of raw stats, which is great. But the Glaciate active is kind of trash. It really is kind of trash. Just what it is. Finally, lethality mythics are getting nerfed for ranged champions, so the on-hit slow is now only for melee champions. Back to before the preseason. Visibility for stealth is a good thing. And then Eclipse, the range shield is going down by about a quarter. So here we go. Here's the range shield. Now this is how big the shield is with just Eclipse by itself for the bonus AD. It's down by 26%. And then as you get more bonus AD on top, it's down 29%. So pretty substantial shielding cut, range champions. Of course, we already know that Jhin was getting nerfed. And now Jin's best item is getting nerfed. Now the problem here is there are no compensation buffs to Varus, and this is a very, I would say it's a small missed opportunity, but it is a missed opportunity. I think Riot kind of failed to have good follow-up on Varus here, because I think Varus was fine in 1024. Lethality Varus was a totally reasonable champion. But Riot nerfed lethality items for ranged champions, which Misfortune and Jhin needed, but Varus kind of needs, like, those were his best mythics. And, like, yeah, you buffed Gale Force and Essence Reaver, but Varus is going to feel kind of bad about this for a while. So, unfortunately, Varus is probably too weak to play next patch. But, oh well. Tank items, Bomb Cinder costs 100 more. Sunfire Aegis losing 100 health, so now Sunfire Aegis has the exact same health as all the other items. It makes it basically the squishy version, which, I'll be honest, I actually kind of like that. Frostfire Gauntlet, slightly less slow field range, slightly less increased size. Turbo Chem Tank, slightly less slowing. Now, to be fair, Chem Tank is really only _1 best in slot on Skarner. And Skarner's doing pretty well, so I mean, he can stand to be nerfed, not a big deal. But let's talk about Sunfire Aegis. Is now, weaker item overall. You are paying quite a lot for Immolate. And I mean, rightly so, to be fair, right? I mean, this costs like at least 500 in most cases. It's very, 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 very good. I guess Immolate now kind of costs more per point based on the fact that components have changed around. Bomb is just obviously too OP. But also worth pointing out, I guess one small thing is that because the item has 100 less health on it, Immolate does 1 less damage per tick, which you might think is small, but that's still like a, 5-ish% damage cut, which is not that bad. That is somewhat meaningful. Obviously, again, yes, still multiplies out, still quite good as Flame Touch goes on, sure, all those things, but basically, Sunfire Aegis is now the squishy Sunfire Cape, right? It is the squishiest of the Sunfires. If you want to go for the high damage one, with Immolate and Flame Touch being stronger than the other ones, it means you have the lowest combined health, armor, MR. And that's fine. Like, I think that's totally reasonable to do. Whereas if you want to be the tanky one, you say, oh, I need to be tanky, and I'm against physical or I'm against magical, so I'm going to go into Chem Tank, I'm going to go into Frostfire. We're going to go that way. I think this actually works out just fine. And if you want to be the damage guy, you get the squishiest one. Like, it's totally reasonable to do. Tank's definitely overperforming, so good to see that nerf come through. And then here's Snowbind's Radius, based off of how many times you have the Mythic passive. This would be if you sold boots, which I don't think is likely, but it's possible. But either way, yeah, 9 to maybe, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14% off of the Radius. You'll feel that a little bit. Item shop updates, in-game chat updates. Next Blitz returns. Big ranked update for basically how decay and stuff works. Refund tokens. Bunch of bug fixing QOL. And it's a really big patch, so we're about 2 hours in. Time for the TLDR on patch 10.25. A lot of changes to champs that really needed buffs and nerfs. Let's get into it. Okay. Amumu, this is from the previous patch already. It's from the hotfix. He's in an okay spot. Anivia, the big things here is the attack's going to feel a lot better. The Q is going to go a lot faster. The Q total damage is higher. The E damage is higher. The R cooldown's lower. The R base damage technically is lower. Q cooldown scales more with rank. Mana costs a lot better. These are very big buffs to Anivia, who is slightly weak and is going to be quite strong after the patch. Anivia, OP in mid and OP on support with the right builds. A bit slower overall, still a bit too strong. Echo Jungle is very bad. Deals 75 or 67% more damage to monsters through his passive, which is a pretty big deal. Should still be slightly weak, but a lot better. Fizz, still going to be one of the best mid laners in the game, but has less mana. Gragas, still going to be probably too weak for most solo queue plays, but hey, more durability, more clear speed, good things. Aurelia, also incredibly weak. 2 AD and 1 second of the Q cooldown is going to help, but still going to be very weak. Ivern, really big buffs. 2 seconds off Q, 1 second off E, 1.1 AP ratio up on E, and 12% more attack speed on Daisy are all really big deals. Ivern should be in a pretty good spot next patch. Jhin losing 10% total AD ratio on the Q means a fairly large damage decrease overall, plus 2 of his best items getting nerfed. Jhin will probably still be on the slightly strong side, but totally, I think, reasonable overall. Karthus is very slightly weak in lanes and very weak in the jungle. Mana cost decrease should help jungle more than in the lanes because he has to spam a lot more. AP ratio increase is quite good to help his late game. Should be a totally solid laner, probably still a slightly weak jungler. Kayle, very OP, especially in mid. Losing MR is going to help the mid matchups quite a bit. More scaling cuts off Kayle. Should still be OP, just not as absurd. Kayn, best jungler in the game, losing 3 armor, 10 damage on Q, and 1 second off the Q cooldown. Now, Red Kayn overwrites the base damage on Q, so that's going to be less of a nerf to Red Kayn. Red Kayn is now going to be the only good Kayn. Well, the only OP Kayn. Blue Kayn's going to be fine, but Red Kayn will still be strong, just not the best champ in the game anymore. Lee Sin, the worst champ in the game, gains 3 armor, gains really 1 cooldown on the W, and 20 flat damage on the E. Now, I would have liked some E scaling to go up to 300. That would have helped, I think, quite a bit. But overall, yeah. He's gonna need the help, and he's still gonna be slightly weak, but he's gonna get closer. Lulu, end of the day, this is actually, even though it's a bunch of changes, this is still fairly close overall. If you put E on someone and nuke them with Q, it's actually less damage in a lot of cases. Ultimately, she is very slightly strong in solo lanes as well as support, and this is actually fairly power neutral. Your wave clear is up slightly in some cases and down in some cases. Champ damage up and down slightly in some cases. This should be fairly power neutral overall, but I like the changes. They're fun changes. Mordekaiser does about 7% more damage to isolated Q. Great, slightly stronger, still a bit weak. Morgana mid, very OP, does a little bit less damage late game. Off W rank ups, still going to be a strong mid laner. This does not affect support Morgana at all. Nasus gains a half-second cooldown off the Q, which is pretty nice. Should gain about 1% win rate, which is about right. Nidalee is very bad. Let's talk about the fact that the mana cost is going down by 20 at max rank of Javelin Toss. The damage going up by 20 at max rank of Javelin Toss, and Primal Surge is going down by 10 to 30 mana. These are all very big buffs for a very weak champion. Should still be sub 50, but these are really much needed and bridges the gap a lot. Pantheon is going to try to be pushed into solo lanes and away from support. And so less move speed means less roaming. The E no longer blocks turret shots and no longer increases duration because support Pantheon really just wants to tank for a long time and just stun someone after roaming. If he gains levels, Shield Vault is going to do more damage. You're still going to max it last probably, but that's going to be useful. Comet Spear costs us mana so that top lane Pantheon can wave clear and poke and stuff. And the big winner of this is Grand Starfall. Grants 10 to 30% armor penetration. This is a really big deal. Here is what it means. Level 16 Pantheon, even against non-tanks, is doing 17% more damage all the time. If he builds lethality, it's even more than 17% more damage all the time, which of course is going to build lethality. This is a really big deal. I mean, even at level 11, which is totally reasonable to get in a solo lane, that is a 10% damage amp before lethality. And even more of a damage amp, like, if you build lethality, or if you're against tanks, it's just more than 10%. So in basically all cases, this is a really substantial damage increase. It also means he gets some more upfront damage on the R. This is a big deal. Yeah, Pantheon, substantially stronger in solos. Samira, much weaker, no longer gets free knockups. Only if they're already airborne do you get more knockups here as Samira. Less healing off of Q and R. Samira is going to be fairly low win rate. She's going to be in a lot weaker spot. It was already wrong to build Bloodthirster second on her. You have even more reason not to go BT second now. Yeah. Samira's going to be overall slightly weak. Seraphine is a roughly acceptable mid laner, is getting some health per level and self-shielding to make her more durable in that lane to withstand assassins and such. That will be felt pretty much. Shyvana's passive now works more in Howling Abyss and Nexus Blitz. Good stuff. Taliyah is a totally playable mid, bot, or support. An incredibly weak jungler. She's getting 2/3 more damage on her Q on the jungle monsters. That's going to be pretty impactful. Probably still slightly weak, but this is still a pretty big bump. We don't see a lot of patch changes where you do 66% more damage, and this is one of them. Twitch, definitely very bad jungler, very bad support, fairly weak AD carry, 10% attack speed, 5% slow, 5, 10, 15 more damage on R, all pretty meaningful buffs, all going to help a lot. Twitch is going to be in a much better spot as a result. Yasuo and Yone gain 1% attack speed growth. They both have very bad win rates. People are also building them wrong with still building Rage Blades when they shouldn't, so that's eventually going to go away and that'll help, but as that gets sorted out, win rate will grow, and they kind of needed the help. Rengar is totally fine in top lane, but complete garbage in the jungle. So now the W does like triple damage to jungle monsters, basically, which is a really big deal. It scales up character level, not rank, which means you can leave it as a 1-point wonder to level 14 and still do like 330 damage off your W. That's really powerful. This is going to really help his clear speed, and Rengar will be much closer to balanced. I don't think he'll be OP, but he'll be playable. Warwick gets a bonus AD ratio on his passive, and there's a bunch of tools with bug fixes, and otherwise a very minor to flat damage. Warwick, if you build him tank, is actually very strong. Tank Warwick is a very reasonable champion, high win rate, totally good, but AD Warwick is kind of bad. So they buffed AD Warwick to try to close that gap between AD Warwick and Tank Warwick. Overall, going to be a strong jungler. AD Warwick probably gets to break 50%. It's pretty close. Talon is actually OP if you max Q first. If you do or don't, you're still going to get value out of this rake buff. This means that W max Talon is going to be very comfortable, and Q max Talon is going to be quite OP. Wukong does bonus damage to monsters with his E. He's a totally good top laner. He's close as a jungler. Nice small buff, looks fine. Collector no longer executes minions. Muramana works on physical spells only, which is a really big deal for things like Ryze, Cassiopeia, Orianna, but even still hurts some physical damage champions like Lucian and Ezreal and whatnot, so kind of feels bad, but we'll see if there's any follow-up that's needed. Rage Blade is now consistent in turning your crit to 0%. Zeke's Convergence is nerfed as a tank item, but much better for mark damage. Might end up being overall power positive, to be clear. Seeker's Arm Guard, 10 less AP, no longer Giga Broken, just very strong. Small nerfs to Hail Blade and Ember Knife for people who attack quickly. Battleglass Mirror is no longer a crap item, it's now balanced. Ardent Sensor and Flowing Water, easy to build into, that's kind of nice. Imperial Mandate is cheaper, upfront damage cut by 40%, but overall damage, if you get everything, every proc exploded, then it's more damage than before, plus being a cheaper item. Means the Renewer cheaper, and the upfront healing is better, but the long-term healing is worse. Locket cheaper with a little bit less shielding, overall probably a stronger item. Shrelia's cheaper with very little bit less Inspire bonus damage, but this was a underpurchased item, so good that this is more of a buff than for like Locket or Moonstone maybe. Good change there as well. Big buff to crit items, 5 AD on Gale Force, 5 AD on Essence Reaver, 150 gold off of Zeal, 200 gold off of Rapid Fire Cannon, Phantom Dancer, and Mortal Reminder. 10 AD and 100 gold increase on Mercurial Scimitar, 5 AD on Lord Dominic's, and Infinity Edge is now a lot more crit damage for most of the game, but you have to buy it third. Here is the Infinity Edge. Here it is. Here's our Infinity Edge graph. Assuming you buy it third, it is a big damage upgrade through your third and fourth major item. It's only slightly stronger at item 5, and that's even if it was a crit item, so overall, definitely a stronger item overall. Big buffs to 80 carries. Next up, 10 ability haste given to all the mana mythics, and 4 magic pen dropped off Luden's Tempest, so less one-shotting, more they all have the same ability haste. This, yeah, should help mages feel better, but it also, lowers the comparative value of Liandry's, which has been dominant on basically every mage, so good changes overall. Duskblade no longer slows for ranged champions, and Eclipse has about 25% less shielding for ranged champions as well. Bombay Cinder costs 100 more, does not change the total cost of Sunfire, I believe. I could be wrong. I mean, technically, like, up here, they said like, hey, by the way, Chemtech Putrefier, the combined cost is up because Bandoglass Mirror is cheaper. They did not say that with Sunfire stuff, but they're not saying that we're making these items cost more, but they're also not saying that they lower the combined cost. So I don't know for certain. I know this was on PvE. I'm sure someone in the comments down below can tell which one this is. Regardless, Sunfire is overperforming it the most of all. Turbo Chem Tank is overperforming the least of all. So I think good that like this was the biggest change. This was the smallest one. Arguably the smallest one. I think Frostfire's Gauntlet's change is somewhat meaningful. It's like a 10% radius decrease for the most part. And yeah, that should be a solid amount of systemic nerfs to tanks overall. So that's it for the patch rundown. It was 2 hours because it was a lot of patch. I'll see you next time. Bye.